We have the Jeddah race weekend right around the corner, and before we go into it, I want to give my analysis and thoughts on every single team, whether they will be worse or better in the Jeddah Grand Prix. I will give my predictions at the end, 1 through 10, but I will give my thoughts on every single team and where I think they will be good and where they will be bad. What's good about the car, what's bad about the car, low drag, all that stuff, getting deep into it. And before we start the video off, thank you all so much for the support. It is amazing. I love the comments. I love everything. You guys are amazing. And please subscribe if you haven't. I upload almost every single day. And leave a like while you're at it. Hit the notification bell too, please. Let's get started into the video. So the first team that I want to talk about, which probably had the worst weekend in Bahrain, is McLaren. So what do we know about the car? Clearly, it is unreliable. That is the biggest thing I can probably say for the MCL60 right now. Its reliability is a problem, and its brakes are still pretty bad. Some good signs were, though, its tire degradation was pretty good. Jeddah is a track that doesn't really focus on tire degradation, though, so they could still pull out some pretty strong pace. I do not have them finishing the points. I actually think that both cars will not be fast enough to compete with the top 5 teams that I do have going into Jeddah. I don't think it will be a worse race weekend than it was in Bahrain. They actually were not bad last year, with Daniel and Lando very close to scoring points. But last year did kind of exaggerate. The cars that were really bad in the straight line speed were really bad in Jeddah. And this year, everybody's straight line speed is improved, and McLaren is actually the worst on its straight line speed. Pretty close up with actually Haas. I think Haas was actually pretty low down there as well. So, considering that, the McLaren is slow and still pretty draggy. It's kind of like in the middle. I'm going to say McLaren is going to have a better race weekend in Jeddah. I do not see them scoring points. It will still be with the bottom 3 teams going into Jeddah. The next team I have, which actually I think will have the worst weekend, is Alfa Tauri. Now, what makes me say this? First of all, the car is very draggy. It is not the same car that we had last year. Last year, yet again, they still have that Honda Beast engine, which is a bullet on the straights. Don't get me wrong, probably still the best engine we have in Formula 1. Close up next to that Ferrari, Mercedes is very reliable, but that Honda is reliable and fast. Obviously, the aero package they made this year seems like a more efficient one when it comes to downforce. They didn't have downforce last year, but now they have too much drag. The car is extremely draggy. It could not pass the Williams, which is a fast car down the straights, but in a track like Bahrain, you should be gaining in a lot of sector 2 if you have a very draggy car. They still weren't even able to do that. The car was super slow in the straights, it even had bad tire degradation, so the AlphaTauri is not really looking like it's going to compete. I don't think that they're going to get anywhere near the points. AlphaTauri will have a very hard time actually competing in this Jeddah track. And I have them actually worse than in Bahrain, because we actually did have a 11th place for Yuki and 14th for Nick De Vries, which was not bad. They were actually pretty solid considering how Bahrain was towards that car. Next team I'm going to talk about is the Williams team. And I actually have Williams coming in to surprise us for this weekend. I think that they will actually be fighting pretty close with that McLaren car. Maybe Albon could edge a 10th place. In Jeddah, a very important part to Jeddah is having just the right amount of downforce, but also straight line speed. We know that the Williams has very low downforce, but has absolutely no drag. The car is not draggy whatsoever. It just needs to pick up on its downforce and that the way that the car performs. There are some high speed and medium speed corners which will actually put the Williams down, but 2 big straights, a lot of time to make up. If they're pretty smart on their tires, which they have good tire degradation, that will help them. The car seemed very front oriented. It didn't even seem like Bahrain would have been a good track for them because they didn't have much downforce, and yet again they still got a point. So a track that is front oriented and actually helping the likes of that Williams car could very much take them from a place that they did not think they could actually get to. I have already heard rumors that the Williams car is stopping its development for 2023 and solely focusing on 2024. So I guess they're taking a Haas, but the car doesn't seem that bad. And maybe we get a couple parts. I mean, I really hope so. I want to see Williams score some points, man. I want to see them finish above maybe even a couple of teams. Hopefully they can beat Alfa Tauri, and maybe they can beat out, I don't know, Haas. But I really don't want to see them 10th. I hope that they perform a little bit better. And I have them having a better race weekend than in Bahrain. Almost forgot the race. But yes, I have them having a better race weekend in Jeddah than in Bahrain due to the fact of the straights and less tire deg. And they're already good on their tires, so maybe they can play around with strategy. And maybe Alex can pull off a crazy one and get a point for that Williams squad. Next team I'm going to talk about is Haas. And I think Haas might be another dark horse actually going into Jeddah. Last year, they actually got into points with K-Mag. We also know that Mick tumbled into the wall and broke most of the car. So they didn't have two cars, but the car that was in the race actually did perform pretty well. They didn't have a car that was really fast in the straights, but they had great speeds in the corners last year, kind of like the Ferrari, and that really helped them in Sector 1. Sector 2 and 3 were a little bit difficult, but most cars on the field last year had pretty bad drag. So this year's Haas has a lot of drag. It's not that great when it comes to its actual cornering speed. It's a little bit of a downgrade to what we had last year in the Haas. Clearly, every team has improved, and they haven't improved enough, which is why they're kind of down that pecking order. But their tires were getting shredded in Bahrain. Like Hulk was going through them. He even uses the phrase, like a hot knife through butter. Like, I mean, literally that is what it was. It was just, they were getting melted. So on a track with lower tire degradation, in a car that's in the middle of really drag, I have them performing better, and they are gonna, I think, fight with Williams for that like 10th place point. Now, I mean, is that really being a dark horse? Not really, but that's kind of where I have them at. I think that they will have a better race than they did in Bahrain. I have them as going better going into Jeddah. Okay, going on to the Alfa Romeo team. Now for Alfa Romeo, I have them actually doing worse. I'm just going to say that straight up. I think that this year's car performed really well in Bahrain due to other teams performing really badly in Bahrain. For example, Alpine, Ocon was nowhere. Gasly had to make his way all the way back up the field. Haas was really bad. McLaren were nowhere in sight. So they benefited off of those teams not performing well. But the actual car itself is pretty draggy. It misses out on a lot of straight line speed, which was a problem last year as well. They don't have the advantage of the weight that they had last year. Bottas did go to score actually points in Jeddah and actually had a pretty decent race, but I don't see it happening like that this year. I think that Alfa Romeo car is going to do worse than it did in Bahrain, and it will have a tough time actually in not being able to overtake on the straights. Maybe if something crazy happens, they could score points, but I do not see Alfa Romeo scoring points, and I think that Bottas and Zhou will struggle pretty badly in the Jeddah Grand Prix. Now we're moving into some of the bigger teams, and I'm going to start off with Alpine. Alpine, to me, feels like they will have a better race here in Jeddah. Alpine had a terrible race in Bahrain, but I'm talking about pure performance when it comes to this. The car is what I would call the most balanced in drag, in low and high drag, but a slower car than the top four teams. They were pretty fast on the straights. Last year they had a bullet with Alonso, so their Renault engine could be decent. We got to see how it performs in Jeddah. Last year though, Alonso and Ocon had that crazy battle, which maybe even led Alonso to leaving. Ocon and his teammates are always pretty feisty with each other, so let's hope that doesn't recreate itself in 2023 when Gasly and Ocon already have a very dodgy relationship, I would at least say. The car is pretty quick though, so they could actually overtake, but I don't have them having a amazing weekend. I kind of just have them average. Yet again, I think that fight for P8, 9, and 10 will be a huge one because maybe there'll be a retirement and maybe one of them can move up to P7. I find it tough to believe that any team will beat out Ferrari, Aston Martin, Mercedes, and Red Bull in this Grand Prix, and I think Alpine will be fighting for that 5th position, so I guess I could have them having a better race weekend going into the Jeddah Grand Prix. Now moving into the top 4 teams, which most of you have probably been waiting for. And the team I will first talk about is Ferrari. First of all, Ferrari is a straight line monster, the fastest car that we have on the grid, and I still don't think they have extracted everything out of that engine. Clearly, the reliability problems are a problem. The car is very low on drag, very highly efficient, but man, it is a tire shredder yet again. And that is a big problem, but on a track like Jeddah, this is where that car will really shine. I do believe Ferrari will be better here than in Bahrain, and I actually have them competing with the top teams. We might even see a Charles Leclerc win. That's my bold prediction for this Grand Prix. I see Ferrari being very fast here. I think they have a chance of really shocking the grid and actually presenting the car that we have been expecting out of them in the Jeddah Grand Prix. This will be the race for them to actually show off what is the potential of that Ferrari. And if it's not, then it is going to be a very bad year for Ferrari. But I have them going into Jeddah being a lot better than in Bahrain. Now moving into the last three teams, let's talk about Red Bull. Let's leave Mercedes and Aston Martin for last. Let's talk about Red Bull. As for Red Bull, Bahrain was a great track for them because of their tire degradation. The tires were not disintegrating at all. They were literally on practically new hards the whole entire race. I think Max Verstappen could have taken a soft from lap 1 to practically lap 50 in Bahrain. That is how good that car is on tires. So it already gives them the advantage on everybody on any track really when you have a car that is that quick and also that great on its tires. It allows you to push the whole entire time. Now, a track that doesn't have as much tire degradation could now bring the field closer because now we will actually see the true raw pace of cars, not just tires. That Red Bull was very quick in high-speed corners. It had great braking. So Sector 1 is practically a lockup for Red Bull, unless Aston Martin pulls something out of the ordinary with that car. I do think they will be quick and second quickest, but that Red Bull was very fast in the first sector. So I do have them fighting. I actually think they will have a worser weekend than Bahrain. That doesn't mean that they might not win. They might still win. They are super fast, but I think Bahrain will be a worser track for them. And we could actually see a lot closer of a battle. And I do have it being a very close battle between the top four teams, really. So Red Bull coming into this weekend will not be as good as in Bahrain. Let's talk about Aston Martin, the second to last team really in all the teams for the Jeddah race weekend. Okay, Aston Martin is the team that I just made a video about and talked about how they're actually going to perform really well in the Jeddah Grand Prix. Well, I still have that statement staying. I think it will be a better weekend than in Bahrain just because I have really followed Aston Martin and I know what their car properties are. Front oriented, I talked about it in the last video. They're great on their tires. They're going to perform really well in Sector 1, and then they can actually mess around with that rear wing, which somebody actually pointed out in my comments. The rear wing will be a big factor in this race. If they can get a smaller rear wing, they can be a lot faster than they were in Bahrain, essentially giving them a lot more top speed. They already got the downforce, so they just need the speed going in the straights. So Aston Martin will have a better race weekend, and I think should take the fight to both Ferrari and Red Bull. Now, the last team that I have is Mercedes, who I think will have a surprising Jeddah Grand Prix in comparison to what Bahrain was. Bahrain was surprising in a negative way. It did not actually, nobody expected them to perform that badly in Bahrain. It was not a great race for them. They did have okay pace, but the tires were getting shredded. So a track like Jeddah should really actually excel at showing what the car is really good at. By the way, they had a pretty big rear wing in Jeddah, even though they messed around with it, and still had the fastest car on straight line speed, up there with both the Ferrari and the Williams, while also keeping still some pretty high drag and some downforce. The downforce has to be worked on. Some parts are coming in the Jeddah Grand Prix, which should help Mercedes, and we'll really get to see the true raw pace of them. I think they will do better than in Bahrain, and I actually think it will be a 4-team battle in Jeddah. Now, I pray this happens, but I genuinely think it can be that close and we could get a wild race, with Mercedes maybe pulling something crazy and going for a win. Okay, as I said in the beginning of the video, now I'm giving you where I'm ranking all 10 of the teams from 10 to 1. Shouldn't take us too long, but let's get started. In 10, I have Alpha Tauri. I named all my reasons. Super draggy car, super slow in the straights. They're not going to perform well in Jeddah. At number 9, I actually have the Alfa Romeo. Alfa was pretty close with everybody in race pace, believe it or not. They will not perform well here. Draggy car means problems on the straights. They can't overtake, so I have Alfa Romeo going in 9th. Sorry to the Bottas and Zhou fans. At number 8, I actually have the Haas. While it will perform better than in Bahrain, I still find that car to have a lot of problems. And I think reliability might be a problem here too. So in 8th, I'm going for Haas. In 7th, I actually have the McLaren. Believe it or not, yes, in 7th, I have the McLaren. I still think it will be a bad race weekend for them. They don't have much straight line speed. They'll probably be fighting with the Haas, maybe fighting with the Williams. It'll be a tough weekend for McLaren again. In 6th, I have the Williams. Yeah, Williams is actually not dead last in one rankings video. Yes, I have the Williams in 6th. I actually expect them to perform pretty well. 6th place for the Williams. 5th, I have Alpine. I think that they're going to be what Mercedes was last year in 2022, kind of that dead man zone, fit for Alpine. In 4th, I have Aston Martin. Aston Martin is 4th for me. I think this is a super close toss-up between 4th to 1st, but the car isn't as fast in straights as the other 3. It will probably put them down the pecking order for that reason. I thought that in Bahrain as well, but hey, maybe they shocked me. In 3rd, I have the Mercedes. Yeah, I think the Mercedes will perform better than Aston this race, but I think they will still struggle in some parts. I don't think they will be as quick as the Ferrari and the Red Bull. It'll be a very close toss-up. In number 2, I have Ferrari. Just because I think the first sector might shred them. They should perform a lot better than in Bahrain, but I still don't think they have it in them to inch the Red Bull. I still think it'll be very close. Don't get me wrong. This race could go a lot of ways. And even with Red Bull being a number 1, clearly, I think the top 4 teams all have potential depending on strategy and how the race goes. So Jeddah will be interesting. Don't give up hope that this is just a Red Bull domination. I think it'll be close. Okay, I am done with the video. Please leave your thoughts down below. What did you guys think of the video? Please leave a like, subscribe. You guys mean the world, and peace.